Does my church really need a live stream? That's a question I get asked all the time, and usually in a format where I really can't give my full thoughts on it. Instagram comments aren't exactly known for great discussions. And maybe it's a question that you've been asking yourself as a pastor or a worship leader, a tech director, etc. And unfortunately, it's not a question that has an extremely simple answer, but I'm going to outline some of the guidelines that I've used to measure whether or not a live stream makes sense for you and your church. Now, before I start, I need you to know, this is still all just my own opinions. There are a lot of reasons why you should or should not live stream your church services, and I'm going to talk about a lot of them here. But honestly, you as a church might put more weight on some of the reasons than on others of them, and that's okay. At the end of the day, this is a very personal decision for each church to make, and I can't make it for you. The best that I can do is to provide as much information and maybe thought-provoking questions as I can to help you make the decision for yourself. With that out of the way, let's actually start with some of the reasons to not live stream your church, because I personally love to start with the negatives. And maybe the one that I hear the most often is, we don't have enough money to do that. Well, the whole point of this YouTube channel is that I believe any church can live stream on realistically any budget. And if you want to know specifics, check out the video up here where I show you how to create a church live stream for about $1,000. Next up, you may be worried that people will stop coming to your church and will instead opt to just watch online every week. And I want to be honest, this definitely could happen. But honestly, with most non-mega churches, I think this issue is more an issue of culture in your church and not really about the live stream itself. If you're really worried about this situation happening, I think it's important to communicate with your congregation that the live stream isn't to be used as a substitute for church and meeting in person, but rather something to add to it. You may still have some people who opt for viewing online, but honestly, those people probably had one foot out the door anyway and are just going to use this as an excuse to actually leave. Now, another common reason I hear is that bigger churches are already doing this and they're doing it better than we ever could. And maybe, but they're not your church. Those bigger churches may also be doing their in-person services better than you are. But again, they're not your church. Your congregation has decided to come to your church instead of to those bigger churches. And the same applies to online. Yeah, you may not reach the same audience that these mega churches are reaching, but honestly, that's okay. You have your own audience that they aren't reaching. You may not get a lot of views, but you're probably getting views from people that the mega churches weren't going to get anyway. So it's still a net positive for the kingdom. Maybe you're worried about having a bunch of cameras in your church and ruining the look and feel or the overall vibe. Maybe that just means you opt for some ceiling-mounted PTZ cameras, or you put your manned cameras in very unobtrusive areas with some really long lenses. I definitely get this particular reason, but also people are used to seeing technology everywhere these days, and after a few weeks, those cameras kind of just start to blend in, just like anything else in your church. Well, we don't have the technical know-how, and our live stream definitely won't look good. And I get this one. When we started our church live stream during COVID, we definitely didn't have the tech skills, and honestly, it didn't look good. But we've poured hours and hours into figuring out systems and a style that works for us, and now I think our live stream looks fantastic. And if you're still worried about that, well, go ahead and use the link down in the description and sign up for one-on-one consulting sessions with me. And I can help you figure out all of the technical details that you need to know, and even help train your team to make sure that your live stream looks as awesome as your in-person church does. And finally, one of the main reasons I hear people vote against a church live stream is that, well, we could use that money for something else for the kingdom, which is fair. We want to make sure we're being good stewards of the money that God has blessed us with. But go on a little mathematical journey with me, and I'll use some numbers from my church as an example. We've spent about $15,000 on our live stream over the past 4 years that we've been running it. And that's not an insignificant amount of money, but compared to a lot of other live streams, it's also pretty cheap. Now, if we break that down over the 4 years that it took us, that's about $4,000 a year. And if we continue to not buy anything, that gets amortized over more and more time. Now, in Oklahoma City, where we're located, the average salary is about $60,000 a year, according to a quick Google search, which means that hypothetically, a church congregant tithes $6,000 a year. So that means if our live stream brings in one new congregant a year, which, by the way, it brings in a lot more than that, we would have brought in an additional $60,000 just by having it over the past 4 years. That means we'd have $45,000 more to contribute to our community and to the world than if we didn't have a live stream. It's almost like we can't afford not to have it. Now, I know this is making some assumptions about salaries and tithing habits and how many people are finding your church through your live stream, but you get the picture. Okay, so those are some of the reasons not to stream. Now, let's look at some of the ways that live streaming your church services can have a really positive impact on your church. Some of these are going to be pulled from very personal experience and the philosophies that we hold at my church, but some will also just be related to things that I've seen online and in other places. So first off, people can stay up to date with what's happening at church and stay connected with sermons if they're traveling or homebound for one reason or another. For example, when my wife and I traveled overseas to adopt our son, we were still able to worship and listen to sermons even from Eastern Europe. This is also helpful for those who may be sick or have sick children on any given week or long term. Honestly, I feel like most people these days actually expect that they'll be able to watch or listen to the sermons that they miss in some capacity. And with how approachable live streaming is these days, I kind of tend to agree with that. Now, related to that, live streaming also creates a sort of backlog of sermons for the church, a historical record, if you will. This has so many uses for the church. It's useful for the pastors or the worship teams to look back and see how they're doing and see things that can maybe be improved upon week to week. It also gives a cool look at how far the church has actually come over time, rather than just being a feeling of how you're growing. And it gives new members, or potentially even new believers, a slew of messages that they can dive into in order to grow in their faith and feel more connected to the church body as a whole that much faster. Live streaming is also obviously just a cool way to reach more people with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Putting our services online has the potential to put the Bible in front of so many more people who maybe would never have seen it before. And it's not just your actual services that are being streamed. Recording our services gives us the ability to create lots of short form content that we can put on Instagram or other social platforms super easily. And now those platforms have discovery algorithms that allow so many people to see it that wouldn't have otherwise. It's honestly such a powerful way the church has of reaching the lost that we've just never really had before. Some churches use this to even foster a completely online community. And that's not for everyone, I get it, but it's possible in a way that has never been before. Now, finally, a church live stream is more and more becoming the new front door to the church. And by that, I mean people who are church shopping are watching live streams of churches long before they ever step foot inside the doors. Now, whether this is good or bad, you can kind of decide for yourself, but it's kind of the reality of the modern age. So by having a broadcast that accurately portrays what your church believes, how Sunday services run, etc., you're actually increasing the appeal of your church to people searching for the right one. Almost every new attender to our church has watched at least one service online before trying it out in person. So we've seen this happening in real time and the importance of it. Now, these are definitely not all of the positives and negatives of live streaming. There are infinite reasons to do or not do something. But there are a lot of the big ones that I've heard of or experienced at our own church. You may hear some of these and think, well, that doesn't apply to me in my church. And honestly, yeah, you're probably right. These don't all apply to every single church. And you may care about some of these points more than you care about others. And that's why I think you need to consider this holistically and decide if live streaming really makes sense for you and your congregation. For me and my church, we've decided that it does make sense, but also that it's not something that we're gonna pour a ton of our financial resources into. We know the points that I've mentioned that we care about, and we feel like we're hitting them at a standard that we're extremely happy with. You can live stream your church with as much or as little work involved as you want. It's entirely up to you. But I hope we can all be okay with churches who decide to do it and churches who decide not to do it. I also hope that if you decide to keep live streaming or even start live streaming, that the videos on this channel help show you that you can do it without it costing your church every single dollar that it has. Live streaming can be approachable and affordable for anyone. And I hope that you can see that. If you need specific help with live streaming your church services, feel free to sign up for a consulting session with me using the link in the video description. I'd love to lend my knowledge and expertise toward helping you reach others with the gospel. Until next time.